Hello again, everyone. So, new week, new city. So, this week I'm going to be heading off to Chicago and talking about all the sports teams in Chicago. So, I'm going to start off with the Chicago Bears of the NFL. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll be looking at the two baseball teams, the White Sox and the Cubs. Thursday, I'll be checking out the Chicago Blackhawks of the NHL. And lastly, I'll be finishing off the week with the Chicago Bulls of the NBA. So, starting off today, like I said, with the Chicago Bears of the NFL. Last season, the Bears had a 5-11 record. So this upcoming year in the NFL draft, they have the seventh overall pick. And looking at some of their team needs, they need a pass rusher and they need a linebacker, and they also need some help in their defensive back core there. So looking at who they could potentially be drafting, again, it's hard to do now when you still got 2 months before the draft and you got a bunch of free agency happening. So depending on how much cap space they have, they might be able to fill some of these needs with free agents. But looking when you have a top 10 pick, you're going to be looking pretty heavily on drafting a player that can make an impact right away on your team. And I think they'll draft a linebacker there who has some pass rushing abilities. Some names I'm going to throw out that I think they might be able to get. Dante Fowler, a lot of people have him projected as going as a top five kind of thing. If they're lucky, I think he might drop down to them at the seventh spot. He played his college career at Florida, so obviously a good school there for a football program. So he could potentially drop to the seventh spot there. Another guy who I think they might take a good look at is Vic Beasley. A lot of people don't project him to go in the top 10. A lot of people have him going, mid first round, late first round. I think with his performance at the combine, his stock has increased drastically, and I think that he'd be a great pick for them at the seventh overall spot based on how he did at the combine. Some other names that they might be able to get: Bud Dupree. He would also be a bit of a high pick at 7 overall to take him. Randy Gregory might also be a nice pick there. So there are a few names that I think they might be able to look at and get with the seventh overall pick, especially if they don't acquire a linebacker or a pass rusher as free agency. That's definitely what they're going to be looking at to draft. And with the seventh overall pick, I think one of those four names will be available for them to draft with some other teams ahead of them in the draft. Obviously the Bucks are going to be taking a quarterback with their first overall pick. So then you only got 6 other teams ahead of you, 5 other teams. I apologize, ahead of you, and I just mentioned 4 names. And one of those teams is going to be drafting a wide receiver for sure, because you usually see your receiver go top 5, especially a team that needs some help in the receiving corps. So they should easily be able to get one of those 4 names. Ideally, the best option I think would be for Dante Fowler to drop to them. He might not drop that far, but he could. So I think if he's there, they'll definitely be taking him. And then my number 2 choice for them would be Vic Beasley. Like I said, a lot of people don't project him to go in top 10. They're more mid first round, late first round, but I think he'd be a really good pick at 7th overall for Chicago. So that's what I think they could do to improve that with the draft. Like I said, last year they went 5-11. They play in the NFC North, which is arguably one of the more tough divisions, I'd say, in the NFL. You got the Lions and the Packers in that division, two teams who have consistently made the playoffs the last few years. The Packers 12-4 last year, Lions 11-5. So you got two teams right there who are again threats to have 10-win seasons. The Vikings were 7-9, so even the Vikings, they almost had a 500 season. So you got 3 solid teams that you have to compete against more than other teams, kind of thing. And obviously, to win the division, you got to beat the teams in your division, because that if you have tied records at the end of the year, they're going to look at how you did against your division. So you got 2 tough teams in the Lions and the Packers that you're going to be playing twice this season. So you gotta want to make sure that you find a way through free agency and through the draft to acquire talent that you can compete with those teams, so you don't finish 5-11 and get another top 10 pick next year. You want to try to make the playoffs. Last year their offense was shaky. Obviously, 23rd in points. They were just averaging 20 points a game. And then they were 15th in the pass though, so 237 yards a game. So Jay Cutler gets a lot of bad attention, bad press, a lot of negative attention, I feel. He's not a guy that you can compare to Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's quite in that same category, but he's not far off either. Like you're 15th in the league in the pass, so you're top half of the league in the pass. That's good. 27th in the rush, though. You're only running they were only averaging about 90 yards a game on the ground. So you're obviously going to want to find some way to increase your rushing attack and make the defense a little more on edge of what you can expect. But if you're only rushing the ball 90 yards a game, you really can't establish a run game. So the defense is going to be expecting the pass more often than they are the run, because you're not going to run the ball if you're only going to average 90 yards a game, because that's just going to get your offense off the field too quick. Overall, though, they're right in the middle overall. Then last year, 21st in yards, 15th in the pass, 27th in the run, 21st overall in yards, 327 yards a game. So that's not bad. That's okay. But obviously, you want to improve on that. But the defense is where they really need to improve. Defense wins championships is a common saying and logo and stat kind of thing that you're going to want to look at. And they're 31st in giving up points. They're giving up 28 points a game, over 370 yards. That was 30th in the league. They're giving up yards. They were giving up over 260 passing yards a game, so that was also 30th in the league. They were 17th in the rush, though. They were only giving up 112 rushing yards a game. So again, that's not bad. At least you weren't, one in the bottom three in that category. But again, it's something that you want to improve on is stopping the rush. But clearly, the pass is really where you want to be improving and getting down on the points, because, like I said, they were giving up 28 points a game. They were only getting 20 points a game. So if the other team scores on average a touchdown more than you, then that's definitely something where your defense needs to improve. So, like I said, looking back at the offense with Jay Cutler, like I said, I think he gets a lot of bad cred. He's not an elite quarterback by any means. I wouldn't put him in the same category as Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and those guys. But like I said, he's not far off. He is a good quarterback. Last year, with 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns to 18 picks, so that's not bad. 370. He had 561 passing attempts and 370 catches, so it'd be nice to kind of increase that a little bit more. Also, 560 passing attempts is a whole lot for a quarterback to do. Like, if you think about it, 160 pass attempts would be 10 a game, so 480 would be 30 a game. So he's throwing the ball 35 plus times a game, and that's a lot to expect from your quarterback. If your offense is on the field a lot, that's great, but your defense clearly being last in the league, your offense probably wasn't on the field a heck of a lot, and expecting your quarterback to throw the ball 35 to 40 times a game is a lot. But when you're only running the ball 90 times a game, he's going to have to throw it more because you can't establish a run game. So, that's why 370 for 561 is not that great of a pass completion percentage, but they're expecting a lot out of him. And I think that's the other thing that he gets a lot of bad credit for is the Bears expect a lot out of him, but he doesn't produce. Well, get him a running back who can, give him some help in the backfield and keep the defense on edge, and you won't have to expect him to throw it so much. And then I think he'd be a more successful quarterback. But like I said, he's not horrible. He's a good quarterback to have. He just gets a lot of bad credit, I feel. He has weapons in his receiving core. Alshon Jeffrey, which is his fourth year in the league, 85 receptions. He had over 1,100 receiving yards this year and 10 touchdowns. So that's, again, only 4 years in the league, so that's somebody you can build around. It's a great wide receiver to have. You can look at Martellus Bennett, nice tight end. He's a veteran. This was past season was his 8th year in the league. He had 916 yards, so there's two guys. You almost had 2,000-plus yard guys right there, so that's really good. Brandon Marshall, veteran wide receiver, he had 61 receptions this past year, so he's another guy that you can get the ball to, 2-3 times a game and see what he can do with it. Matt Forte, though, is the cornerstone of your offense. He was playing exceptionally well. He led the team in receptions. He had over 100 receptions, over 800 yards, four receiving touchdowns. So Matt Forte is the guy that your offense is running around with Jay Cutler at quarterback, because Matt Forte is a running back, 8 years in the league. So he had 800 receiving yards, and then he had over 1,000 rushing yards on 266 carries and 6 touchdowns on the ground. He was averaging 3.9 yards a carry, so that's good. Any running back that can average around 4 yards a carry, that's pretty good. That's a guy that you want to build your offense around. But like I said, when you're only averaging 90 yards a game, you can't just keep handing it off to Forte all the time. That's why he's getting a lot of receptions out of the backfield, because if we can't run the ball, we have Matt Forte. We're going to utilize him. What's the better way to use it? Getting him with the screens out of the backfield is a way to get Matt Forte the ball and let him use his skills to get you some yards and get you some points. The young running back they have, Carey, just his second year in the league. He just had 36 carries, so just a couple of game kind of thing for 158 yards. It's a 4.4 average, But again, when you have Matt Forte, you're going to have a young quarterback, like I said with Carey, just 2 years in the league, that he's going to learn from Forte, give him a few touches a game, let him get used to the NFL game and what you expect out of him kind of thing. And then when Forte decides to retire or goes to another team, then this guy will have been in the league for a little while and will know the playbook and can make an impact. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, Ryan Mundy led the team in tackles. He had 75 tackles, 28 assists, and 1 sack. Seventh year in the league, but he's your strong safety. Like I've said in previous posts, if a cornerback or a strong safety is the team leader in tackles, that means way too many players are getting to the second and third level, and you don't want that happening. So that's something you want to improve on. If your team leader in tackles is a linebacker or defensive lineman, that's great. That's what you're looking for. You don't want it to be your strong safety, but a great player to have. John Bostic, a young guy, just third year in the league last year. He's an outside linebacker. He had 58 tackles and 26 assists. So there's the linebacker that whoever you draft has been in the league for a few years, but is still young. So you got some linebackers there you can build around. You also have Christian Jones, who just had his second year in the league, 42 tackles, 27 assists, and 2 sacks this past year. So if you draft a linebacker, you're going to have 3 young linebackers that you can build around, and some guys that have been in the league for a little while that your new guy can learn from, which is great. Kyle Fuller, just a second-year cornerback, which is nice young cornerback you have there. 51 tackles, 13 assists. He had 3 forced fumbles, 10 pass deflections, and 4 picks. So that's amazing for a cornerback that's only been in the league, that only had his second year in the league last year. So that's a really good young cornerback to have, especially when your other cornerbacks, you have Charles Tillman, Tim Jennings, who have both been in the league for 10-plus years. Tim Jennings did 50 combined tackles, 7 pass deflections last year, so that's great. Charles Tillman obviously got hurt. He only played in 2 games. In 2013, he only played in 8 games. So I'm thinking he's going to announce his retirement if he hasn't already. He probably will be in the near future. I just think when you've only played 10 games in the last 2 seasons and you've been in the league for 10-plus years as a cornerback, it's hard for you to keep up with receivers nowadays, especially when they got explosive speed. They're just going to beat you on the long passes kind of thing. So I think it's time for Charles Tillman to retire. And like I said with Kyle Fuller, he can step in as a nice young cornerback and not replace him. I don't like using the term replace a player, but he can do a decent job for the team kind of thing. Jared Allen, a big name kind of thing. He's been in the league for 12 years, had an off season last year. Just 37 tackles, 19 assists, 5.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. So that's okay. But when you look back at his 2011 season, he had 66 combined tackles and 22.5 sacks. But ever since the 2011 season, he's kind of been going downhill. 2012, he had 12 sacks. 2013, I think he had 10, and now this past year he just had 5.5. So he's been going downhill. But again, it's also been 12 years in the league. So is he also kind of on his way out, nearing retirement kind of thing? He's not producing the way he used to. So that's why the 7th overall pick that you have, it's got to be a guy that can affect the pass rush. And I'm thinking they'll lean to a linebacker, maybe a defensive end, definitely going to be defensive side of the ball. But, Jared Allen's getting older. He's not producing the way he used to. I think they'll also probably draft a cornerback in the 2nd or 3rd round. The cornerback field is pretty deep in the draft this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a cornerback with their 2nd or 3rd round pick. So that's what I think the Bears are going to do with the draft, where they need to improve. A lot of the stats that I've mentioned for their players, you don't want your strong safety leading your team in tackles. You want it to be somebody else. They got a young receiver in Jeffrey there. You got a young running back, depending on what Matt Forte does and how much he can produce for you. I think you want to try to lighten the load on him a little bit, lighten the load on Cutler so he's not throwing the ball 35-plus times a game. But I think this year they'll definitely improve. I think they'll at least get to a 500 record depending on how they draft and how they develop their players. They did win the Super Bowl back in Super Bowl 20. They won the NFC Championship in 2006. They've won their division most recently back in 2010. So they've had recent success. And I think with the draft and the players that they can acquire through free agency, they'll have success again in this upcoming season and compete with the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings for the NFC North title. So good luck to the Bears this upcoming season, and hope you enjoy the rest of my chats this week when I stop off in Chicago.